Dust swirled across the horizon like a slow-moving storm, a ghostly veil that danced with the harsh, unforgiving sun. The town of Redstone lay below, a smudge of wooden buildings, half-rotted porches, and the occasional plume of smoke curling lazily from a chimney. It was one of those towns where the wind spoke more than the people, carrying the sound of rattling tin roofs, the clatter of wagon wheels on uneven planks, and the soft whisper of the prairie grass as it bent under its own weight. The main street was empty, save for the occasional tumbleweed bouncing along, tumbling and spinning as if guided by an unseen hand, a solitary actor in an abandoned theater. 3 figures appeared over the ridge, silhouetted against the burning sun. They moved with the precision of men who had spent a lifetime measuring distance, angle, and the weight of their own shadow. Each step was deliberate, each motion careful but brimming with quiet menace. The first was tall and lean, a shadow of muscle under a sun-bleached duster, his hat pulled low over a face that had long since stopped showing mercy. The second was broader, with a chest like an anvil and hands that had cracked more knuckles than most men had kissed children. His eyes were hidden behind dark lenses, reflecting the glare of the sun like twin shards of obsidian. The third was younger, wiry, and twitchy, constantly adjusting his grip on the revolver at his hip, as if the weapon were an extension of his nervous soul. They didn't speak. Words were wasted on the wind. Instead, they moved as one, a trio of predators drawn by a scent only they could perceive. Somewhere down in Redstone, the man they had come for sat unaware, nursing a whiskey at the far end of a bar whose windows reflected nothing but the pale light of a dying afternoon. The first gunfighter's name was Calder, a man whose reputation had preceded him in whispers and bloody tales. Towns would tremble when his name was spoken, and the echoes of his deeds stretched far beyond the borders of the territories he had traversed. He had the look of a man who had stared into death too often and had found it a poor companion. His presence alone demanded respect, and fear followed him like a loyal hound. His coat, worn at the seams, flapped in the wind like a dark banner, announcing the arrival of trouble before he even reached the first building. Beside him, the larger man was Boone. Boone's strength was legendary, though few had lived to tell the story. It wasn't just that he could crush a man's skull with his bare hands or throw a horse off its hooves if angered, it was the calculated cruelty in his smile, the patience of a predator that knew exactly when to strike. While Calder was the sword, Boone was the hammer, and together, they had orchestrated chaos in every town that had dared to host them. The youngest, a scrawny gunfighter named Finch, was still learning the art of fear. He had ambition, and ambition was dangerous when mixed with talent. He watched his companions carefully, absorbing every gesture, every pause, every unspoken command. His hand trembled slightly as he rested it near his revolver. It wasn't fear of death that made it shake, it was the intoxicating rush of the hunt, the knowledge that the next few hours could define him, or destroy him entirely. Redstone was quiet, too quiet, the kind of quiet that stretched your nerves taut. Windows shuttered against the glare, doors closed before the trio had even stepped onto the wooden planks of the main street. A dog barked somewhere, a lone sentinel announcing the passage of strangers. Calder's eyes scanned the town with mechanical precision, noting the saloon first, because that's where a man like the one they sought would most likely be found. The saloon sat at the north end of the street, a squat building of weathered timber and sun-faded paint. Its swinging doors creaked in the wind, groaning like an old man burdened with secrets. Inside, the man they sought, known simply as Eli, sipped his whiskey slowly, as if trying to taste the final moments of peace before the storm. He was neither young nor old, though the lines etched into his face suggested a life worn hard. His hands rested on the counter, calloused and steady, betraying the quiet strength that had carried him through more danger than most men could endure in a lifetime. Calder stopped at the edge of the street, surveying the terrain. Guns were holstered, but ready. Every plank, every shadow, every loose shutter was a potential threat. He noticed the signs, a rocking chair moving slightly on a porch, the faint silhouette of someone ducking behind a window curtain, the slow sway of a lantern catching the dying light. Redstone was alive, but it was alive with fear, not hope. And fear made people predictable. Boone, unconcerned with subtlety, let out a low whistle, the sound slicing through the quiet like a knife. It drew eyes. One man peeked from a doorway, saw the 3 figures, and vanished like a ghost. Boone smiled, teeth flashing briefly, a predator savoring the scent of panic. Finch adjusted his stance, hands tight on his revolver, his pulse quickening. He had read the signs, memorized the patterns, and yet nothing could prepare him for the weight of Calder's gaze when it fell upon him, cool, calculating, measuring. The three moved forward in silence, boots clattering on wood, spurs jingling faintly like the distant toll of a bell. The wind carried their approach, bending the dust in spirals, and Redstone's inhabitants shrank further into shadow. The saloon doors swung gently as if inviting them, but also warning. The man inside was aware, always watching. Eli raised his head slowly, not with panic, but with a calm born of countless confrontations. His eyes were sharp, colored by the memories of long nights and longer battles, each glance measuring the distance between life and death. He saw the first of them, Calder, stop at the end of the street, hat tilted, shadow long. The whiskey trembled slightly in his glass as he set it down, not from fear, but as a gesture of preparation. He was not a man who ran. He was a man who faced, and he had faced before. The three gunfighters paused at the middle of the street, forming a triangle of silent menace. Calder's hand hovered near his holster. Boone flexed his fingers in anticipation. Finch's eyes darted, taking in every angle, every escape route, every potential advantage. And then, without a word, they began to move in sync, the rhythm of danger tightening around the saloon like a noose. Inside, Eli's hand rested casually on the bar, but his mind raced, mapping out every possible outcome. He had faced men like these before, cold, ruthless, unrelenting, but three at once was a new challenge. He did not flinch. He did not betray his thoughts. He simply watched, calculating, as the trio's shadows stretched long across the sun-baked street. The saloon door creaked under the pressure of the wind, swinging back and forth. Calder paused for a fraction of a second, sensing something. Boone's hand twitched, impatient. Finch's breath hitched, a subtle rhythm of excitement and dread. The town itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the inevitable. Horses shifted in their stalls, a couple of windows rattled. Even the wind seemed to pause, as if the world itself had recognized the importance of this moment. Calder's gaze locked on the doorway, and for a heartbeat, time seemed to slow. 3 seasoned killers had come to this town with one purpose, and the man inside the saloon represented the fulcrum of their intention. There would be no negotiating, no turning back. The street had become a stage, the buildings the audience, and the gunfighters the relentless actors of fate. Finch shifted slightly, trying to find a better angle, unaware that Calder's eyes had already measured his every move. Boone's shadow stretched long over the planks, his presence a silent warning to any foolhardy citizen who might consider interference. The air smelled of dust, sweat, and the faint tang of metal, the signature aroma of approaching violence. Inside, Eli adjusted his stance, a small, almost imperceptible movement that spoke volumes. Every second mattered. Every sound, every shadow, every flicker of light could be the difference between survival and a cold, empty grave. He was ready, though he didn't yet know how the next moments would unfold. Outside, the gunfighters reached the midpoint of the street. They paused, a silent calculation taking place, muscles coiled, nerves taut. Calder's finger brushed the trigger, Boone flexed, and Finch's eyes glimmered with anticipation. They had come with one goal, and nothing in this town, neither wind, dust, nor hesitation, would deter them. Eli rose slightly, his hand resting on the revolver at his side. The bar behind him creaked under the weight of history and time, but it offered no real protection. He was alone, and yet, there was a quiet confidence in his posture. He had faced death before, and he knew that courage was often measured not in the absence of fear, but in the willingness to meet it head-on. The 3 gunfighters had come to kill him, and the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long, menacing shadows that stretched across the main street of Redstone. Every plank, every window, every nail in the walls seemed to pulse with anticipation. The world narrowed to the distance between the saloon door and the approaching trio, and in that narrow corridor of fate, a single truth hung in the air: one man, alone, and 3 relentless hunters moving closer with every heartbeat. Time slowed further, each moment stretching into eternity. The wind stirred the dust into small cyclones, the air shimmering with heat. Calder, Boone, and Finch were almost upon the saloon now, shadows looming large and threatening. Eli's eyes were steady, and for a fraction of a second, it seemed as though the world itself had paused to witness the inevitable confrontation. And then, the first movement, almost imperceptible, rippled through the air. The street was alive with the silent promise of violence. Dust swirled more violently now, kicked up by unseen feet. A bird took flight, startled. The wooden planks groaned under the weight of inevitability. The three gunfighters advanced in perfect synchronicity, each step measured, each breath a testament to their deadly purpose. Eli's hand gripped the revolver firmly, muscles coiled, every sense alert. Outside, the shadows lengthened, stretched across the street, and pressed against the walls of the saloon. The wind carried the faintest hint of gunpowder, though no shots had been fired. And still, the trio approached, silent, relentless, their eyes fixed on a man who seemed both ordinary and extraordinary in equal measure. The tension was almost unbearable. Every heartbeat was amplified. Every rustle of dust sounded like a cannon. Every shadow seemed to stretch closer, heavier, hungering. Redstone itself seemed to lean forward, its wooden buildings straining to witness the unfolding of fate. The three gunfighters came to kill him, and they did not yet know the storm they were about to awaken.